Hi everyone, Alon Nitzia. I'm the CEO of October Health. We're here for another episode of Pressure Point. Really excited. We have Victor Sekese with us. He's the CEO of SNG Grant Thornton, one of the leading audit firms and consulting firms on the African continent, obviously part of the global GT as well. So Victor, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'm really excited to have you here and to hear a bit about your journey. We're also going to unpack, I guess, a bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly that sometimes you don't talk about the accounting or audit profession. But before we get into any of that, obviously, you've had an incredible career. You are today the CEO of SNG, but would love to give our audience, our listeners, a bit of insight into your journey and how you landed up where you are.
No, thank you, Alon, for asking. It's a long journey. It's been a 34 years journey. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I assumed the role of CEO way back in 1998, and I must say it was a baptism by fire. I was not ready for the position because I had to assume it when our then CEO left the firm to go to commerce and industry. And I've been privileged to lead the firm through the various epochs and up to now, where we are really working very hard to make a difference out there.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing story, and something which I always say, I guess you don't know how to do a role until you do it right, and sometimes that baptism of fire is required. But I guess, how did you step up, right? I mean, as you said, you felt like you weren't ready, but you clearly were. And where the firm was and where it is, I think, testament to your fortitude, your resilience, and your leadership. So how did you navigate? How did you step up, so to say?
Yeah, I must say that I think it was a collective, and at times, especially during the early days, I used to say that I'm the face, but I was fortunate enough to have at all times, in fact, teams changed over time, but I've been fortunate and blessed that each time I have a team that looks at the collective, a team that is interested in the success and the sustainability of the firm. And that helps a lot because as the CEO, then you are not a loner. Firstly, you need those cheerleaders, but secondly, you need collaborators who will collaborate with you and give their giftings to the firm. And one has been able to achieve what we've achieved largely because of the team that one works with as such. So in the initial stages, it was learning, trial and error. As I said, that the first lesson was public relations 101, because we were sort of, I would say, in a crisis of some sort, because we had a very high profile leader, very well known, very established in the business sector, and as I say, his departure was untimely. And the stakeholders thought that maybe the firm has folded, and we needed to come out there to give assurance to all the stakeholders that we're still around, we're still intact, and we are in here for the long haul. And we've really, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, because what that did, it really enforced the partnership spirit and the understanding that we need each other, and we are successful because we collaborate and we bring our individual gifts, our individual talents for the good of the firm as such. And that, as we speak now, I'm comfortable that it's a solid virtue of the firm, looking into the bigger picture, looking into the purpose of the firm. And that's what has sustained us and I think it will sustain us even into the future, where we've built an institution that will live regardless of the personalities in place. I mean, personalities are good in an organization. You need personalities in an organization, but the connection and the nexus between the personality and the firm should not be such that, if anything happens to the personality, it has a negative impact on the firm, but the firm remains nevertheless. And I think we've reached that stage. Whether I'm in charge or my other colleague is in charge, it shouldn't really matter because the system is effective. The system has matured to live without the personalities as such. It's
bigger than any one person.
Certainly, yeah.
I think there's a lot that I want to unpack there. I think before we get into culture, which I think you've already touched on, and it obviously leads us into the broader discussion, but what's clear is that you've got this focus on team and it's not about individuals, which I assume plays a big role in your culture. But before that, just on a personal level, what is it that drives you and motivates you to kind of keep on pushing yourself? Because I'm sure it hasn't always been easy, right?
Yeah, no, certainly. I think we've gone through very interesting times. As you said earlier, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one fortunately had the resilience to go through all those stages. So very early in my career, I think as a trainee, I went through a very, very difficult, trying times where one experienced the imposter syndrome. And I took a decision at that stage, knowing at that stage that where I was performing, I was not performing at my full potential. I sort of had an understanding of my potential, and I could see that in terms of the opportunities, in terms of what I was busy with, was very far from my potential. And I thrived at that stage to do anything and everything to move myself to potential. And once I have the feeling that I've achieved my potential, I need to redefine and stretch myself in many ways to redefine the potential. So it's a moving target of some sort. And moving that target is what kept me energized and keeps me motivated and etc. Because each time we achieve something, we move that. And you can see it in the journey with the firm through different times where we achieved certain big milestones. As we achieve those big milestones, we redefine other bigger milestones because we know of the possibilities that are out there, always stretching ourselves. And that's sort of the mantra that I'm living with. You always have to stretch yourself in many ways.
So it's that drive to just realize that potential. And
yes, no, certainly, yeah.
I think you also shared a term with me, which I love, the term of BHAG, right?
Yes, no, certainly, yeah. Always aim for big, hairy, audacious goals. I mean, also in my studies, I'm now sort of a life, what do they call?
A lifelong learner.
Lifelong learner. And I dealing into areas that are not closely related to what I'm doing as such, but they tend then to open up my perspective, my horizon, and in that respect, one grows. So being curious all the time, and that's what I always tell my mentees, that curiosity should keep you going all the time. We as human beings, my belief is that you need to be curious because you are always becoming. We are human becoming. And that's a mantra that I learned. And in you becoming, there's new vistas that you need to go into, new learnings all the time. At any point in time, there's something new that I'm following, that I'm learning, which is not directly related to what I'm doing.
But it helps bring the whole together, right, and broaden perspective.
Yeah. No, certainly. I mean, accountants generally are notoriously known to be one-dimensional.
Yeah. You wouldn't associate it necessarily with this curiosity beyond maybe.
Yes, no, certainly. And that's how we've traditionally been trained. I'm glad that we're looking into changing that framework to make accountants more versatile, more, and we are getting there.
Yeah, 100%. There's some great success stories.
No, certainly.
And I'm definitely chatting to one of those textbook success stories. Yeah. So, I mean, just before we get to culture, a lot of what you've touched on, we talk a lot about this concept of performance psychology and the traits behind performance psychology, all these things that you've mentioned around resilience, around this mindset of continuous learning, of, you've got a high agency mindset to change your reality. You said you had this tough time as a trainee, but you didn't become a victim of your circumstance. You turned that around into drive to push you forward. So I just think it's important, like all these traits are the things that have made you successful. So if we kind of take a bit of a different direction and think about the firm, obviously it's a large organization. I think something which came through when you introduced yourself, you hardly spoke about yourself. You spoke about the team around you. So is that team element a big part of your culture at GT?
Yeah, and it's our culture. So we are part of a global organization, Grant Thornton International, and Grant Thornton is revered for its culture. I think among our peers in industry out there. So we've got a common value set, acronym CLEAR. The C stands for collaboration. So we're saying for us to be able to achieve anything that we want to achieve, we will not be able to do that unless we collaborate within our teams, collaborate across various teams, collaborate even across geographies, where we create an environment where people are able to bring their own unique giftings, their own unique talents. And it's only if you bring those talents together, then you come up with something very powerful, very potent out there. And in the same framework of aspiring to live towards your performance, and the organization never actually realizes its own full potential unless it leverages on everybody with their diversity. It doesn't matter your field of expertise. It doesn't matter your area of specialization or your geography, your gender, for that matter. Is in that diversity that you really get the full value, and not diversity for its own sake, but giving space to everybody to be free to express themselves. The term that we've now are using, we're using psychological safety, and we started measuring that post-COVID. In our annual surveys, there's various matrices that we look at from our people voice, where we hear what our people saying about our people promise, whether we live up to the people promise, and we added a dimension of psychological safety. I must say I was very nervous when we included that dimension, especially coming out of COVID. And I was expecting very horrible results in that dimension, but I was pleasantly surprised. I think we got about 70%. So where 70% of our people felt that our environment is psychologically safe. I think that gave me a lot of comfort, and because I was expecting the worst, and we don't have national benchmarks or any other benchmarks to compare against, but in its absolute sense, 70% is a good benchmark. But I said to the team, we should not be comfortable about that. And I really admire what my people and culture team did. I think they went out of their way during COVID to really address the holistic wellness of our people. And I think is the fruits of their efforts that our people feel to a very large extent that we are a psychological safe environment, that we do that. But it's easy to drop on that, because then, and if you are intentional, that's why I say my assessment is because of the intentional interventions we did during COVID. So we need to think differently post-COVID to say, how do we keep the momentum going? Yes, maybe the interventions might be different, the thinking might be different, the approach might be different, but we need to be intentional about this, because it's only when people feel safe to express their inner thoughts, their desires, their fears, they're vulnerable, that you are really able to harness the potential of the organization, the potential of the firm. And that's my focus. I work closely with my colleagues and the PNC to say, let's stretch ourselves, let's not relax, and let's engage with our people. What is it that we should do, we can do, we must do to continue with offering a psychological safety environment. I've got my own internal targets on the psychological safety. I will not express that.
It goes back to your point around those BHAGs and trying to realize your potential, not just settle.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, clearly, just, kind of an observation, we just launched a well-being report with Gibbs. And what was interesting out of that report was that there are two factors that influence individual well-being in the workplace. And those two factors are psychological safety and trust in leadership. And, it's clear from the way you speak about the organization that you're trying to do that and drive that in a very authentic way, which is key to the ultimate well-being and, importantly, productivity and performance of your people. And I think that's maybe a good segue into the next part of our discussion, where, without speaking about SNG and Grant Thornton in particular, but the industry of, audits, trainee accountants, I think it probably extends to law firms as well. It doesn't have the best perception on the outside, right? And unfortunately, there have been some tragic stories, not in South Africa, but elsewhere in the world around, individuals who went through very difficult times. And unfortunately, that ended in tragedy. So there's clearly something about the environment that's not working in the way that it should and needs to be addressed. That what I appreciate about you is your willingness to kind of address that, acknowledge that there are areas that need to improve, and then focus on the path forward. So what do you think it is about the accounting industry or these high stakes professional services industries?
Yeah, look, I mean, audit profession, not only locally, globally, everywhere, it's a high pressure environment, and I think we move from deadline to deadline, delivery, etc. And trainees go through a lot, depending on where they are in their studies. They are young. Some of them are still studying for the professional qualifications, or are still maybe doing their postgrad. So they are under extreme pressure, and to overlay that pressure around studies, then there's pressure around delivery as well. Whilst, yes, you are a trainee, and depending on your background as well, there's pressure from home, the so-called black tax. And sort of from some of the communities, there's an expectation that, Vic, you've been to university for so long. Now it's time now for you to give back. Your siblings are coming up, come and contribute. And not all people are able to explain their situation, where you still give the impression that you're still a trainee. The pressures, you are working. And what we try in the conversations that we have with our people, to give the impression that you still sort of under training. So this is an extension of schooling as such, although in a different way, because we're more doing the practical side. Yeah. So under that pressure, and the pressure to deliver, and to deliver good quality. And of course, the profession has been under pressure for the wrong reasons, in terms of all the corporate scandals, where stakeholders were asking, where were the auditors? So the regulators have come in hard, strong in terms of demanding. So the demands, whilst they always been high, they've even been higher because everybody needs to go out of their way to produce a good quality product. So the pressures on these young professionals is immense. It's immense. And hence then the narrative that the audit profession and, like you said, other professions, it's a toxic environment. I think that's the general narrative globally. And as you alluded to some of the unfortunate incidents elsewhere, there is that narrative. Now, the tendency and the risk is to accept that as given, right? To say, this is how it is. And generally, you find that the leaders went through the system, they went through those challenges and they overcame those challenges. And the disposition, the general disposition in the profession is that, well, I went through it, so you go through it. And if you're persistent enough, you'll ascend to where I am. You'll also be a manager. You'll also be a partner. Just be persistent. And I'm saying that's not sustainable, especially if you overlay the generational aspects to it. The Gen Z, they've got a different approach to life, different priorities. And as it is now, we're struggling to make the profession attractive. And as it is now, there's a critical skills shortage, global skills shortage at that level, because more and more young people are not interested in the profession. You get some young people coming, they stay with the firm 3, 4 months, 5 months to say, I never bargained for this. And they just drop and looking for more balance, prioritizing different things. Very bright, gifted people. And I'm saying, we shouldn't lose those talents. We need to really be creative to say, how do we create an environment? Yes, of course, there's not much you can change around the high pace deadline living.
That's the reality, right?
Yeah, no, certainly. But to say, how do we become agile enough that within that reality, we creating more better balance, understanding that one's life will not always be balanced, but we program in and make allowance for imbalance. There will be times where there's an imbalance towards work, and there will be times as leaders be comfortable that there will be imbalance towards the social and other aspect. Aspire for that holistic wellness, and holistic wellness, understanding as human beings, there's other elements that need to be effective and up to speed to get people perform to their potential. And that's addressing the mental wellness area, physical wellness, social wellness, and all those wellnesses have to be attended, because if you don't attend to them with time, it catches up with you. And yes, it results in unproductivity and walla. So I'm saying, yes, I think firms on their own, they're doing their own interventions. We'll be working with you in our own unique way to create that environment. But I think it's high time that as a profession, collectively, as the leaders of the profession, for the interest of the profession, for the sustainability of the profession, we really need to address this issue head on and change the narrative of a toxic culture. And I think if we are intentional about that, we will. Yes, there's technology, but the reality is that we'll still need those young, bright professionals to come and work alongside technology.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there. I think, you've touched on, there's the human element, right? And how it's just firstly the right thing to do, right? To treat your people with respect. Mm. And whilst it will remain a demanding environment, how do you set them up for sustainable high performance?
Yeah.
And you've spoken a lot around balance and, ensuring that these different holistic elements, the social, the work side, the health side, the mental health, the physical health side. So how do you operationalize that, right? How do you, SNG is not a small place, right? You've got a lot of different managers, you've got a lot of people, you've got a huge trainee base. Yeah. Those trainees are changing. How do you ensure in a large organization like you have that you can start to institutionalize some of this change to help everyone unlock their potential?
Yeah, a lot of initiatives, I think they're very good initiatives, and I'm talking at a general level here. Then I will talk about what we're trying to do at SNG Grant Thornton. They're wide-scale interventions, and I think they're broad, because of the size. You can't, it's difficult to make them bespoke to individuals, but you sort of spray the whole organization and hoping that everybody is impacted and everybody is touched. That's good, well enough. Our focus is at the leadership level, starting with ESCO, understanding that this is one area that we need to prioritize. We should prioritize because it's important for the sustainability of the firm. Because if we don't address it, there is a huge risk that you may wake up one day, you don't have people are off sick, or people don't want to come here because of the burnout that they experience. And therefore, we have raised it and continue to raise it at the strategic level to say this is a strategic issue. And therefore, when we address it from a strategic, holistic element of it, understanding the pressures, because there is always a risk that the day-to-day pressures take precedence to the strategic long-term areas. And I think that's where our responsibility as the leaders to lift ourselves up of the day-to-day. Not to say the day-to-day are not important, it's not important, but we do that. And that's what we're busy with now, to say how do we differentiate ourselves out there to be different, and let us be the first one to be counterculture. And hopefully everybody else will follow. And we're happy to collaborate and work with our fellow colleagues in the profession.
Oh, well, that's awesome. And I think you need a leader to take that first step.
Yes, right? No, certain.
So I think just also what you've said is so powerful, and that, it's important that this is sustainable at an individual level.
Yeah.
But you're also talking about the sustainability of the profession of the firm, right? If you're not able to attract talent who want to come to the organization, you're not going to, have trainees to do all this work. If you're not able to retain talent, or if talent's burning out, you're going to have a big issue. So it's actually business critical. This is not something that is a nice to have, right? Or that you can afford to address in 3 years' time.
Certainly. I think it has a domino effect. And as I said, the pressures that we are under as a profession to really produce a good quality product out there. And worldwide, the regulators are demanding it. The other stakeholders in the economy, society are demanding it. It's going to be very difficult to achieve that if people don't bring their best selves to the table. And you need to look at all the inhibitors, everything that inhibits people bringing their good selves to the table. Because generally you find that people don't bring their soul, their spirit, their body, their minds to the table. And if you do that, you get suboptimal outcomes. And you're pushing, because you're always looking for these good outcomes. And you're pushing from a different perspectives, policies and procedures, review after review, hitting your big stick and ignoring the other softer issues. And my proposition is this soft issues? And if you are succeeding on these so-called soft issues, the results should be good. The outcomes should be good. Then you are better able to achieve those BHAGs, especially from the stakeholders who are demanding good quality audits, and avoid the situations where people are asking, where were the auditors? Of course, it's an unfair question, but we're not going to get into that. And as auditors, we've acknowledged that we cannot continue to say, it's not our responsibility. It doesn't matter how hard you say it's not our responsibility. Yeah, the stakeholders demand better out of us. Then we really need to look at this issue differently, and we started to look at it differently.
Well, I love that, and I think as we draw to a close here, I think what I love about what you've said though is it's not about a compromise on quality, right? It's not a compromise on output. It's not a compromise on the profession. This is just something which is the next evolution of the profession to enable sustainability. I think often people think of it as a trade-off. Right? We're going to invest in holistic well-being, but then we're not going to be a top-performing firm anymore. But what you're saying, and I think it's so powerful and it's true, is that you want to do both. Right? You want to retain the best talents. You want to perform at the highest level, but you want to invest in your people holistically to enable that. So as we draw to a close, what would you leave with, other leaders, individuals within the profession, individuals in similar industries? What steps can they take to, adopt this mindset shift, right? Where, investing in your people unlocks peak performance. It's not just something that is the right thing to do, which hopefully is enough of, I guess, a motivation. But at the same time, it's business critical to do it.
Again, I think business people are generally, focused on short-term results. And again, depending on where you are, you can see it with listed entities. The people who are listed in the foreign exchanges quarter after quarter, the results, we need to perform and etc. Locally here is every 6 months. Whilst that is okay, it is good, but my belief is that there's overemphasis on looking into the short-term results. And it doesn't help that a lot of remuneration frameworks, they incentivize short-term results. But I'm glad now the thinking is starting to shift with the ESG. It's starting to shift more for the long term, and the long term starting addressing those areas that may not necessarily show short-term results. And investment in people is one of those issues. Why people shy away from that, I think they shy away because they want to see return on investments tomorrow. But it's a long haul. But I think you would be able to look back to say that was the right decisions we took, that was the right investments when you see your organization being sustainable and outperforming your peers out there. But more than that, I think it's an ethical issue as well, because we generally don't see the nexus between ethics and how we respond to our people. We think of ethics around rules, regulations, and etc. But ethics is actually much broader than that. And my proposition is that it impacts on how we treat people, how people feel respected, and taking a view that everybody has got a contribution to make. And as a leader, your responsibility as the leader is to enable everybody to contribute their giftings, talents, and their expertise.
And help them realize their potential.
Yes, of course. Thank you for finishing it out there. No, of course. Yeah.
But really loved the chat, and
Yeah.
time flew by. I think just to kind of summarize some of the key points that we spoke about,
Yeah.
I think firstly, your story, which is motivational and inspirational, and that story of resilience, that high agency mindset, and that, I guess that passion for learning, right, which keeps you motivated to continuously move the needle on where your true potential lies, and then your care for your organization, the care for the team, the people, and it's bigger than any one person, right? And in the same way, to kind of shift the needle on business metrics, on people metrics, on culture, it's not happening because one person is carrying the baton, it's the whole team doing that. And then finally, I think just this view of holistic wellness, investing in your people, firstly, because it is the right thing to do. And I think as leaders, as you say, there's a responsibility to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's the only sustainable way to build a high-performing organization.
You've summed it perfectly. I wouldn't have summed it the way you did. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Victor. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.